Can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay,
I'm
cool.
good.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining in. This is episode 3 of Creators on Brand. I'm joined today by Walt Goshert. Walt helps high-ticket B2B sales pros and business owners attract perfect fit clients. So today we're just kind of kicking around ideas about content and what it's like to create content on LinkedIn and repurposing and things along those lines. So yeah, Walt, I mean, could you, if you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what led you to focus on content creation.
Yeah, good question to start it off. A little bit of my background. I was a commercial insurance advisor, broker with large ticket commercial accounts spending over 100,000 plus per year insurance premium. Um, and did that for 15 years or so. And I had a client who was one of the first internet service providers out in Colorado Springs. And so I saw the potential of LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, but the internet as a whole, way back in the early days, like the mid 90s.
That's cool.
And kind of, you know, I liked insurance. I earned a great living doing it, but it never really satisfied my whole creativity. And I didn't like some of the politics of it. So I sold my interest in the agency and just kind of worked on my own as a consultant. Worked with a lot of actually B2B marketing agencies, ad agencies, that type of thing, and eventually just gravitated back to working with commercial insurance advisors and other professional services people, CPAs, business consultants, anyone who's selling complex, high ticket, usually six-figure types of services.
Right. And how has that been, like, trying to sell the idea of getting online? Is that hard to sell, or do people get behind it pretty easily? What's your experience?
The people who are really kind of in tune to growing their business and their agency, they're open to it. They need a lot of direction, a lot of hand holding because it's foreign to them. A lot of them, it depends on what their background was and how they were trained. A lot of these people were trained as technicians. They're great tax people, or they're attorneys, or they know something about business systems, or they know about insurance, but
Right.
they weren't necessarily trained as marketers. And even their training to attract clients was really very much old school sales based, one-on-one prospecting, not really adding that marketing component in it. So yeah, they know they need it, but there's oftentimes an educational, a learning curve, and sometimes even convincing for
Yeah.
them to jump onto it because they don't think they have time to do it, and a lot of them really don't, but they need to.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of time, I know you create content too. So, like, you're building out your own personal brand on here and things like that. So what's your experience been like in terms of creating content? Has anything changed since you started? How's that been?
Yeah, it's. I think it's even for me, it's a constant struggle to, as you and I talked about before, to balance, working with my clients and satisfying my clients and doing what I need to do to deliver results for them, versus, having the time and the systems really to create content. And I think it's really a case of systems and processes that you're constantly looking to how can you be more efficient and also more effective. And I think the other thing is the bar for the quality of content is constantly being raised.
Yeah.
I remember back early in the days, before we had social media, where you could do, to get Google rankings, and it was just keyword stuffing and all kinds of tricks, and you didn't have to really write very good content to get ranked in Google and get eyeballs and move them into your website and start to convert them into clients. We're now, getting ranked. It's basically Google is a pay to play platform. You're not going to get ranked for popular search terms, and even on a lot of the social media, certainly on Facebook, it's pay to play.
Right.
Fortunately, LinkedIn, you still have some opportunity there for organic content to start to grab attention, but it needs to be great content and it needs to be consistent.
Yeah, and that's the thing too about LinkedIn. That's what I like so much about it, is that it doesn't feel like, for example, Instagram, you go interact with people and things like that. It feels like you're behind a wall almost.
Yeah,
LinkedIn feels very personal, but you're definitely right. It does. You do have to have good content and targeted content.
yeah,
And a piece of that whole, having good content, something that I was thinking about earlier. I see all these posts about, you need to be part of the 1%. You need to be creating content, creating, not consuming. But I feel like consuming content is a big part of this too, because when you're scrolling through LinkedIn, I feel like you should take time to just sit and scroll and see what post made you click read more, what post made you react,
yeah,
and figure out why you did what you did. Why did you comment on something, and implement that into your own content. You can start to, for example, I was telling you earlier, I write hooks before I write a post. Like a week before, I just put them all in a spreadsheet. And essentially all those hooks are based off of posts that have worked for me in the past. And I sit there and I say, like, for example, advice for X, looking for X, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or things like that. But yeah, finding systems is really important. And then using what works and continuing to do it is a big piece. So, because like for example, do you feel like you're repurposing content in a good, solid way, or do you feel like you're constantly trying to come up with new ideas right now?
I think it's a little bit of both. I have content assets, from creating content over the years. So a lot of times I'll go back to old posts that have worked, and maybe just like you're saying, I might tweak the headline a bit to see if it maybe it will land a little bit better.
Right.
I don't think, and I think a lot of times it's a case of, staying on focus, and you're repeating the, different twists on the same topic. Because if you think about how people consume content and what educates them and persuades them, a lot of the content just it pops into the feed and it disappears. The
Right.
Our client may or may not see it. They may or may not remember it. So you
Yeah.
can repost essentially the same thing the next quarter, and you can keep repeating that same thing. But you're looking for different ways to say the same thing
Exactly.
constantly.
Yeah.
I think the more you can focus on that instead of going off on all different types of tangents,
Yeah.
I think you're going to it creates a focus, and I think you're going to have better content when you really focus on, look for 1,000 different ways to say the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the piece too, especially about consistency. I mean, like you were saying, like the post appears one time, you may or may not remember it. But if you show up every single day and you're there constantly, you're going to remember this thing.
Yeah,
And like you're saying, if you keep talking about the same thing, even if you have 300-400 impressions per post, the right people are seeing those posts every single day.
yeah,
And whether or not that brings inbound leads is a different story. There's a whole system you can do to start
it's
bringing leads in. But I feel like it at least builds authority, so that when you reach out to somebody, they already know who you are, and they feel like,
yeah,
I've already seen your content, I already trust you.
yeah, and a lot of times, yeah. And I saw one of my friends posted today. A lot of times you'll get clients from lurkers. I get clients, and I don't know what the stats are. I should probably check this, but most of my clients that come through LinkedIn never commented, never liked anything
Yeah.
that I posted. But all of a sudden, they'll either they'll pop into, and I'll see that a call scheduled. I just had 2 of them last week. They never commented on anything, but they saw my content. Maybe they heard me on a webinar or whatever like this,
Right. Yeah.
and all of a sudden they scheduled time to talk to me, or they sent me a DM.
Right.
And so that the content's hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
just,
mostly creators too that are going to be reacting to your stuff and commenting,
yeah,
because at the end of the day, it's a give and take on the platform too.
yeah,
If you commenting on other people's posts is helping them out, so they'll do the same with you, and you start to build actual relationships with people.
yeah,
um, but your target audience probably isn't going to react to anything.
yeah. My target audience, they're busy running their business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
They're just, if they pop into LinkedIn, it might be they grab their phone. You think about how people use social media or they use LinkedIn. It's they're waiting for an appointment
Exactly.
in a lobby with someone, or they're stuck in traffic. So they pull out their phone and they scroll through LinkedIn,
Yeah.
to get some ideas, or they're bored, or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
their extent of engagement on LinkedIn.
And that's another piece too, because somebody was actually asked me the other day, why are all your posts so spaced out? Why is all the text so spaced out? And I brought up pretty much what you're talking about.
Because
Well,
of mobile.
people are scrolling so quickly, like they want to just skim through what you're saying. And if you click read more and see 12 paragraphs of text, which is something I used to do, you're not going to read it. You're going to scroll right past it.
It's
So
kind of a pet peeve. I keep saying that to my clients all the time, and they continue to just have these blobs of
yeah,
text.
I know.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know why they don't get
I
that.
used to do that too, because I feel like it's like such a, from an education like standpoint, right? Like going through school and things like that, you come out and
Yeah,
you learn how to write one way. And
yeah,
it's
I think it is because of how we were taught to write in school. That if you wrote single sentence paragraphs, it's like you'd
it's like
get
what is it?
you'd get
Yeah,
red marks all over that paper.
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly.
You got to have an opening concept to the paragraph, then a couple
Yeah,
sentences, then wrap up the paragraph. That's how we were taught to
yeah,
write. That's
exactly.
not the way that writing works online.
No, it's not, because everything's moving so quickly and it's continuing to move faster. That's why you need to find other ways to show things. Like we were talking about, like the algorithm earlier, and how it's changing a little bit more towards a visual sense. At least
Mhm.
from what I've noticed. Like text posts don't do as well as they used to, and things are going towards video and carousels and things like that. Um,
Yeah, and
you
I
notice
think
that?
that's a cycle too. I think it depends on who, what are the big creators really pushing? What
Yeah,
content
good
are they
point.
really pushing right now? And I see, it seems like right now 9 out of 10 of the posts I'm seeing on my feed are carousels.
Yeah, me too.
Because
Yeah,
everyone's pushing it right now because for some reason that's getting run on LinkedIn. But
yeah,
that's going to change too. You know,
absolutely.
we had the poll frenzy for a while. We
Yeah,
had the videos. It still all gets back to good content and
right.
maybe mixing it up.
Yeah,
Because thinking that some people they consume content just reading it. Other people consume it visually. Other people consume content through video. So you got to hit different modalities
yeah,
with your
that's a great point.
content.
Yeah, and speaking of like having that targeted piece, what's your way of, like, your target audience, but how you come up with ideas and content that does appeal to them? Do you have a process for that?
Yeah, part of what I teach my clients is, first of all, you need to identify who your target market is, and the simple way to do that is to just list out your top 5 clients you'd like to duplicate. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10,
Right,
whatever. Just you know who they are. They're not necessarily your biggest from an income standpoint, but they're the clients that you like working with. They're
right,
easy to work with. They're profitable. You know that if you could double them, it's a great
exactly.
way to grow your business.
Yeah,
And so you do that, and that information is already there if you have a business. And then you go into saying, okay, what makes these 5 clients similar? You know, how did you reach out to them, or how did they learn about you? How did they get into your world? How do they go about making decisions? What's their
right,
decision making process? Who are the decision makers? What industry are they in? What location are they in?
right. Yeah,
Where do they go to consume content?
yeah,
Who do they trust for content? Are they
that's great.
involved in their industry association? So you start to drill into that, and you start to map and say, okay, what's similar here? And
Yeah,
so that gives you the inkling to say, okay, here is my target market. It's people who are this, this, and this.
right.
Rather
Yeah,
than just out of the blue picking a target market, why not duplicate what's already worked?
yeah, exactly. And something too that it was talked about last week with Aaron. We were talking about being connected with the right people too. So like you have
Yeah.
your target audience and then create content for them, but also be connected with them, so that they
Yeah.
actually.
And I think it's the other part of that, Rami, is, find out not only the target market, but who already do they, like I said, who already do they trust? Who already do they do business with that's active on LinkedIn? For example, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's a contractor. You know, I'm talking about my insurance guys. They're working, maybe it's HVAC contractors. And maybe there's someone that's from carrier systems that's really active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, you want to grab in and start to connect to their content.
Right.
You know, maybe it's some salespeople that are, provide parts or, components or whatever to that industry. Or maybe it's, staffing people. Maybe it's, equipment rental, contractor equipment rental places or other contractors. So, you start to build that it's the same way you build a network offline, create that network online.
And you're right. And that's a piece too, just like show up with their content, like you were saying. Instead of just connecting and saying, pitching essentially, like don't even connect at first, just follow them and comment on the stuff that you resonate with and be present in their community first. Because by the time that you send that DM or make any pitch or do anything, you're known. They know your face, they've seen your profile, they know who you are.
It's a case you definitely want to, before you blast out just connection requests out of the cold. It always makes sense to comment, like their stuff, and add some insightful comments, and that can show your authority. And it's a great way to start to test your content to see what's really resonating, what who else is commenting on that. It's a great way to say, geez, are there any other people that are in my target market who commented also, and start to it's kind of like going down a rabbit trail and finding out, you're making those connections. It's just being more consciously aware of what you're doing instead of just mindlessly scrolling through the feed and, banging a bunch of likes.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And I mean, so overall, like what strategies are you using to kind of like leverage your personal brand and not be scrolling and just constantly?
A lot of my strategy revolves around doing a weekly newsletter, that's based upon, it goes back to those clients I'm trying to duplicate, and really then thinking about what are their pains, what are their problems, what are they trying to achieve, what are their desires, and then writing content around those focused topics. And it's longer form content in the form of a newsletter that goes out every week. And then from there, I can slice and dice that content, whether it's, in the form of LinkedIn carousels, tweets on Twitter, Twitter threads, LinkedIn posts.
Exactly.
I'm a little weak on video. I need to up my game on that. But
totally
it's a case of having a system, and really sticking on to a focus on the content I know that's valuable for my potential clients.
Exactly. And that's what we were saying earlier too, like the whole consistency piece and just, even if you're not getting thousands of impressions, as long as you're staying consistent and targeted, it's working for sure.
Yeah. I don't care about the impressions as much as, I look at, am I getting profile views from my target market? Am I booking appointments with them? Are they responding when I send DMs? Those types of things are much more important.
And like the response to DMs thing, have you noticed a difference, an increase since maybe you've posted more or maybe you've been more present online? Have people responded more positively or?
I think it's a combination of two things. I've gotten better at it. When I first started, I was awful. I was, I probably spammed all kinds of people, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I've gotten better at, just kind of keeping it short, being more patient and trying to build the relationship through the DMs. So I think it's that. And I think definitely the more you show up on content, it's that familiar thing. They saw your content in the feed, or they saw that you commented on something, so it's everything matters from that. So
that's what I've seen too. Because for me, at least personally, I mean, inbound leads, I don't get as many through LinkedIn. I'm getting, profile views like you're talking about. But the biggest thing I've noticed is I connect. This is kind of like my process. So I'll connect with somebody in my target audience. And go connect, like their content, comment, whatever the case may be, and then show up in their DM a few weeks later after that point. And by the time I show up, I introduce myself. They say, oh, hey, I've seen you. I thank you for liking my stuff, blah, blah, blah. And by that point, trust is completely built. And sure, it's outbound reach, but I book a call, and oftentimes it does lead to something else, whether that's, a playbook or a workshop, whatever. But that's like social selling process has definitely takes more time, but it's a higher conversion rate for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's I think it's a case you mix different things.
Yeah.
I've gotten where I'm really focused on. I call it through using Sales Navigator is I boil it down to I call them my Dream 100 target list. So and they fit exactly the clients I want to duplicate. And I also want to make sure that they're at least active on LinkedIn so that I can go in and comment on their information, and get on their radar. And so
then like the 90-day setting, like have they posted in the past 90 days, like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to see if they're active, and I'll also it's not only the LinkedIn message, but I'll probably send them an email also, and I'm even looking at sending them direct mail, because that's something that's a little bit different. People just don't get mail any longer.
Yeah, I sent out a thank you note to 2 of our recent clients, like through the mail. And that was crazy. Like I haven't sent a letter or anything like that in forever. I don't know the last time I did that.
Well, it used to be, and I teach this to my clients. It's when you get a new client, or you have a prospect who is a good prospect, they fit everything. I call it, and this is an old school thing. It goes back to some of the direct response guys. It's putting together a shock and awe package or a kit that you send out to the client, your new client, spheres of influence, or a potential client. It includes just a stack of testimonials, includes a case study, includes maybe a short thing on your bio, maybe even a little, you can do videos now that are print, in a binder. So you do maybe your story and a little bit on your process. So you send this thing out, and you talk about something that really makes an impression on someone. If you send it out FedEx, it's something they can't ignore.
Right, 100%, and that's a big piece. Being somebody that people can't ignore. So if you can find different ways to do that online or in person through however.
And obviously you have to have it where it's clients that are going to be worthwhile. Because that's going to cost you some money. But if you're earning a couple $1,000s per client, why not do that?
Absolutely. And so what's your vision now going forward? Because I know you took a little bit of a break from posting for a little bit. So what's the plan?
I have taken a break. I typically do this time of year because I kind of look at what did I do the past year, and kind of busy with family stuff and looking at what I want to accomplish next year. And what I'm looking to do is really refine my client servicing process and content creation process. Really refine that. I'm out, testing sourcing different pieces of that. I still have this thing where I like to create more passive income as far as, do-it-yourself downloads, maybe, products that teach the process. And, but, you got to have a lot of numbers for that to work. And I just don't have a lot of numbers because of the way I'm prospecting and the clients that I'm working with. But that's a piece that I'm probably going to add in.
And that comes with following kind of trends too. Like that's just kind of accepting the fact that, like you were saying, it is a cycle, and like in a year or a few months, it's not going to be. It might go back to text posts only or whatever. But following those trends, I feel like that's exactly what you want to, like, ride that wave essentially, and just keep getting people to your profile and building a following so that you can do a download piece like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it probably would be, and I think, a lot of the things we talk about these download pieces, and a lot of people talk about making them very inexpensive, but I think maybe that's sometimes a mistake if you're selling a service that's thousands of dollars, because you can then cheapen the value of the service that you're really trying to sell.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. No,
if
that's
you're
actually,
if you're
a problem
selling
I've
a
had. Yeah.
$5 or $7 ebook or checklist or whatever, but then on the backside you're trying to sell them a $5,000 engagement, there's a disconnect there.
No,
Yeah,
I've been just right there, exactly what you're talking about. Because that's what I tried to do initially. I had this one call where it was a brand gap analysis, and it was an hour call, and I was doing it for like $50. And the first few people who got in, like they left, they obviously went through the whole thing, let me do it for $50, and then came back after, and they were like, "Hey man, this is worth way more than $50. I don't know
yeah,
why. Yeah, you shouldn't be charging this." So now I took it down, revamping it a little bit, and it is
yeah,
going to come out definitely more than that.
yeah. Sometimes we think that everyone, we need to be the lowest price. It's We need to deliver the value. It's a
Yeah,
case of, if you're talking to the right clients, and I think it's a lot of times it's really upping the scale of the clients that you're working with too. You
sure.
constantly, and this comes from my background in insurance. We were always looking to scale up the level of our clients.
Yeah,
Because it was the same amount of work whether you wrote at a client that created $1,000 of income for you or $10,000 of income for you.
right. Yeah,
And it's usually the case in our world too.
yeah, absolutely.
So
And also, like, I mean, 20% of your customers make up like 80% of your
yeah,
revenue.
yeah,
And
the old
so
80/20 rule.
yeah, so you really want to focus in on retaining those people, and then, like you were
Yeah.
saying earlier, duplicating and then expanding. Just you
Yeah,
want to really,
duplicating your best clients.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
and then you're constantly looking to get better and better clients too.
right,
So
100%. And so, I mean, you were talking about earlier, you kind of got introduced to everything right in the beginning, so like 20 plus years ago.
mhm.
What's kind of the biggest change that you've noticed online, and with how people view the idea of a brand, or personal branding, things like that? What kind of big changes have you seen?
Well, geez, I don't know. That could probably be a whole conversation in
Big question.
itself. Is how everything's evolved. I think the biggest change has been two things. I think having smartphones,
Yeah,
because we now have access regardless of where we are.
right.
You know, and so it's easy to access information, and then also social media,
Yeah.
and what really has changed, and this is from a client, uh, I guess, acquisition standpoint.
Mm,
Now the client is in control of the information, getting the information in the sales process,
right.
where before, without those two things, the salesperson had control of the information.
Yeah.
And so the client was dependent upon you as a salesperson to deliver that information, where now it's flipped around. I
Yeah.
think
And
that's the biggest thing. And, I think that's going to continue to gravitate more and more in
yeah,
that direction.
because I feel like we're right at this point right now where things are going to start to shift in a new direction. Like I feel like technology especially has gotten to this point where now social media is everything. And like you're saying, people are, your clients are smart people. They're not idiots. They go around, they can see other people's content. They know the other options out there.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, your goal now is to differentiate yourself, and you don't have to do that through a product. I mean, you can build a brand around yourself that makes
Yeah.
people want to work with you as a person and put value on you rather than your product or your service.
Yeah. I think it's awfully tough if you're, you know, like in the insurance business, they all have
Yeah,
basically the same products. If you're a CPA, the tax return is a tax return.
right. Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
same product.
Yeah,
It's a case of what are you doing? It's really that buyer, the client experience. I think is really where you can hone in on creating a difference.
right.
Because and again, I think Amazon has set the bar as far as expectation on the buying
Yeah,
experience.
very true.
They made it so, and I wrote a newsletter about this last week, 2 weeks ago, about removing friction in every part of your marketing and sales process. You
Yeah,
got to look at that constantly, and because anytime there's friction, people are going to resist your messaging. They're going to resist your brand. They're going to tune out.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to make it easier for them to take that next step
Yeah.
is something you need to look at.
And I think something you can do is I mean, have a plan and a strategy, but also an idea that was given to me pretty recently was like having writing sprints. And because what I used to do is do content on a weekly basis, and just kind of like come up with ideas every week and then write it out. But last week I sat down for like 6 hours and wrote out a month's worth of content. And doing it all at one time made it very, very easy to stay very, very extremely clear throughout every post. So now when I look at the next month, I'm very clearly talking about brand strategy and direct-to-consumer strategies, and that's it. And I'm talking about it in a million different ways, and with this, with this show too, and snippets. But doing it at one time, I actually think is pretty helpful. Doing a big chunk.
I think that's a smart way to do it too, and that's why I do the weekly newsletter, because it forces me to do that.
Exactly.
I slice and dice that newsletter out into pieces of content.
And how's that been working for you? I mean,
Well, like I mentioned to you before, I'm looking at outsourcing parts of that, to create, the Twitter tweets and Twitter threads and even some of the LinkedIn posts from that, because it's just a case of having the time to do it. I think once you have the formats, then you're looking at ways to be much more efficient. And I know if I can be more efficient, I can have that same process that I can then teach to my clients.
Exactly.
So which they have much less time to create the content than I do. So I think the other thing, and we touched upon this, and I teach this to my clients, is probably the best thing to do is just what you and I are doing, is interview centers of influence, prospects, your clients.
Exactly.
Do an interview with them, because then you have the content there, and it's 30 minutes, an hour. You do it each week, and you have it on video. Have someone do the video edits to do the clips. Use otter.ai to get the transcript. Shoot that over to a copywriter to do the tweets and the Twitter threads, a LinkedIn posts. So that way you have a system to create the content, and you're only spending 30 minutes to an hour a week to do that content. And some people are probably better. Some of your outsourcers might be better equipped to do. They might have different ideas or better ideas than you do.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. I mean, if you're interviewing customers and you're interviewing other, centers of influence, you're also getting content ideas throughout the entire process. I mean, you don't have to just repurpose that. You just got a million ideas through what people commented on throughout the video or whatever the case may be. You can always repurpose everything.
Well, and it fits the idea of networking. You're then giving them a platform to tell their story too.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're able to then, write a post about them on LinkedIn and spread the word about what they do, whether it's, a strategic partner that you're working with, or even a prospect or a client. You're helping them to promote them. So there's some value for them, and they're going to want to share that content with their network. So you have that compounding network effect.
Right. And that's actually how, when I first started Tembi, that's how I got our first like 4 or 5 clients, is I wrote articles on the 5 of them, and I sat down and just learned about their story from like childhood till now. What's your vision for the future? Wrote those stories out. People liked it, and it was 100% conversion rate. All 5 of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's great. It does help. I mean, it takes time and it takes a lot of work, but I mean, it's 100% worth it for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's just like we were talking about before. Once it takes time, it takes work, but once you have a process down, and you know what you're doing,
exactly.
Just like you have a process now for doing these weekly interviews, and boom, you're already set. You know what you need to do.
No, exactly, and it's about getting over the first hurdle too. It's you try something. It's not like your first attempt's going to be perfect or anything. But that first attempt teaches you everything that you need to systemize and how to systemize it.
Yeah, and you can always get better at it.
Exactly.
And like you said, you're getting I think the other thing that's important is you're creating a constant feedback loop,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you're constantly getting ideas and information,
Yep.
from your clients, from your prospects.
Yep.
And so you can use that in your messaging, in how you're positioning your branding.
Yep.
It's
Absolutely.
it's not a once and done thing. It's an evolution, and you're always looking to get it to improve it and make it better.
Right. And something too that I've noticed is, like with that feedback loop, being polarizing or being, having, putting people on opposite sides with your content actually helps you quite a bit.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's really, really good, because I put out a post a while ago and it was talking about the new age of branding. And, I talked all about how it's like kind of our core philosophy, etc. But the comments were 50-50 split of what is this? Is this even, anything? And then the other 50% was, oh my God, I love this. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And so that 50% that really like it are now showing up consistently on posts and things like that. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is it's not only your content, but it's part of how you're qualifying your clients too.
yeah,
You on one hand you want to attract your ideal clients, and then on the other hand you want to repel the people that don't fit
exactly.
uh, who you're trying to attract.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to be polarizing to some extent.
Yeah. And be
And just
public.
come out and say it. Hey, I'm not for everyone. And
Exactly.
here's why. You
Yeah.
know, if you think this, I'm probably not the person for you to work with.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the point of building like an intentional brand. So you, like you were saying, you want to attract the people that you want to work with and repel the people that you don't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
definitely.
important. Yeah. So what, in your opinion, what's kind of like the first step a founder can take if they're just thinking about hopping on LinkedIn and they want to start making content, things like that?
I think the first thing is, you got to have your profile in tune. I do a lot of work with people on their profile, and it's, you got to think, and this is really having, a foundational strategy
Right.
is to, what's your mission? What are your values? What are your goals? Who is your target market?
Yeah.
And what's your, and I call it irresistible offer, or,
Oh, I like that.
unique message?
Yeah.
What is it that you're going to do to attract people? You got to think through that a little bit,
Right.
because if not, your profile is just going to be, it's going to be too generalized. It's not going to connect with people.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes, you may need someone to walk you through that, or
Exactly.
get
Yeah.
help to do it, because it's that important.
And
Because
it's
if your profile isn't connecting, if it's not saying, you're not going to get the right connection conversions when you do reach out to people. So your profile needs to be untuned.
absolutely.
And as you're getting active, and the next thing would be is start to comment
Yeah, that's a
on,
huge piece too. Absolutely.
find out who your target clients are, as we talked about before. Have a list of maybe 10 centers of influence, strategic partners who are active, 5 or 10 potential clients, and start to comment on their stuff,
Right.
and leave some real insights. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
you start to build a following and a network from that, because as you do that, people start to hit your profile. They'll start to ask to connect with you. You'll
Mhm.
get ideas about content rather than just jumping right into content. I think it's a case of, have a plan, have an
Yeah.
idea, rather than just, because I see a lot of people just jump in and they start creating content, and
Yeah.
then they
That's
wonder why they're not getting any likes or why it's not working.
right. And that's like what we were talking about earlier, like the whole like blobs of text that comes from
Yeah,
that piece too. That's like, not doing enough, what I call like social listening, just kind of like
yeah,
scrolling through and just leaving comments and just being present on the platform and seeing what's working for other people and applying that to yourself. But don't copy people. And that's something I've definitely learned,
yeah,
because I tried to copy so many people, like Justin Welsh and whatever. I tried to take their exact format and use it for myself, and it was
yeah,
not working at all. But
yeah. It's a case of, I think you need to maybe look at people who are trying to have a similar business model as you do,
yeah,
where, Justin has great content, but his business model
right,
isn't my business model. So what
exactly,
works for him isn't going to necessarily work for me.
yeah.
Um, you
And yeah,
know,
take strategies is what I'm saying. Figure out, like, for example, like I was saying earlier, like what made me click read more, like what part of this
yeah,
headline made me do that. And then go take the headline, put it in a Google Doc, and then just take out all the, make it generic, make it a generic headline that you can use later on. And yeah, sorry.
And I think, creating content does follow kind of almost a template. You got to have that hook headline, maybe, a sub headline to get them to read more. Then you have 3-5 bullet points or where you get into the content, and then you have a summary or a call to action at the end. It's, if you deviate from that, you might do a list post that deviates from that a bit, but that's the basic template.
Yeah, if you're just starting and you want to sell something, that's the way to go. But I was also talking with like Aaron last week, and a little bit with Judy too. We were talking about how, creating content, you don't necessarily have to sell a service right when you hop on the platform. I think you should set up your profile, like you're saying, essentially like a landing page. Like think of your profile like your website for yourself.
Yeah, you want to get them off of LinkedIn. You want to give them opportunities to get off of LinkedIn to connect with you, to get on your email list, to book a call, whatever.
Yeah, and so set that up in that way, but you can be more passive about it in the beginning. If you want to share your experience, if you want to share stories about what you're doing, things like that, start building authority and trust on the platform. That does bring in more followers, generally speaking, than selling a service right away. It does depend on your goal, though. But I feel as though once you hit this is kind of like at least something I noticed on the platform. If you hit a certain follower count, you have authority in the eyes of a lot of people on the platform. And the reason I say this is because before I started building my personal brand in the beginning, I would hop on calls with people and they would be like, who are you? I would have to sell myself. And then as, I started getting more traction and things like that, I hop in a call now and it's like, oh, I saw your post yesterday about whatever. I really liked what you're talking about. And it's a conversation starter. So as you build up, you start to build this authority that really compounds. So you don't have to sell initially to start off.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Yeah, I think, and this is something I haven't been great at doing, but to tell your personal story, a little bit of your background, to share that, I think, you come across as more authentic and real as a person, and anyone can do that.
Right.
It's sometimes, you want to make it where it does seem authentic and it's adding some type of value. But I think that's good thing. That's a good thing to do, and you're not selling anything there.
No, yeah.
You're just trying to get people just to connect with you as a person.
Especially on something like LinkedIn. Like, for example, Instagram is different. It's like you can come and say, hey, look at this product we have, because you're behind this wall. But this is more personal, and you want to treat it as if your community are people. They're not just avatars and things like that, So you want to treat people like people and show up on the platform every once in a while with no intention. So you're not trying to get anybody to do anything. You just want to share something and as if they're your friends, you know what I mean? And you start building this relationship with people without ever getting on a call with them. So by the time you do get on a call, it feels warm, and you can have.
You feel like you don't have to go through the whole rapport building thing when you get them on a call, because the rapport is already built.
Right.
Which is sometimes the toughest thing to do.
Yeah, no, it is, absolutely. And that's the piece about consistency. Show up every day. It doesn't have to be every day. It can be on at least a consistent basis, whatever your schedule is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that everyday thing, I'm looking at that myself. I don't even know that I need to do every day.
I don't think
and I'm probably going to back off of that a bit.
Yeah. I don't do Saturday, Sunday. I don't touch LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and it's just, I just don't feel like I need to do it. And again, it's kind of what example am I setting for my potential clients?
Right.
If they're seeing me every day, then they're thinking, oh, I need to do every day. And that's just not realistic for my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and a break is good. You need a break from.
I think everyone needs to take a break, and you need to reassess and reevaluate.
Absolutely. And also a big piece is not to, I used to be this person who would be like, I would chase dopamine essentially on LinkedIn.
Oh, well, yeah, we all get hooked into that.
And so a big thing is to really just disconnect from LinkedIn every once in a while, because you do get hooked on it. And then it's like when a post doesn't do good, you're not doing good. And that's just that is not an okay way to go about doing things, because most posts aren't going to do very well
Yeah.
in comparison to the ones that do really well. So it's, it definitely take breaks, and 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. That wraps it up.
good. Good stuff.
I wanted to say, thank you so much for joining in. This was a great conversation.
Yeah. I hope it gave some people some ideas and helped some people that are listening. So, good stuff.
Did. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined in. Really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks.